In the 15th year since Jeffrey and I decided to be a dink couple, he had regrets. When he took off his custom-tailored suit in the foyer of our Fifth Avenue penthouse, the cloying perfume on him was like a slap in the face, mixed with the cold wind of a Manhattan winter night, hitting me squarely. And before that moment, I was still Teresa Vance, the envy of New York's PR world, with a partner husband who ruled Wall Street and a perfect marriage seen as the epitome of a power couple. Tonight's Met Gala was an absolute disaster. Jeffrey loosened his tie while complaining as he walked toward the living room bar. The entrance was filled with oriental lilies. My nose is completely ruined, nothing but pollen everywhere. I sat on the cashmere sofa, holding a martini that was no longer cold, watching him quietly. I was also on the guest list, but I had missed it because I was handling a crisis par situation for a tech company's IPO. I knew that the Met's theme decorations tonight weren't lilies at all, but orchids, a plant that produces almost no pollen. What is more, he was severely allergic to lilies. If the entrance had really been filled with lilies, his face should be swollen like a ball of fermenting dough right now. Not like this, flushed, with that peculiar mix of excitement and exhaustion that only comes after fooling around. "So how are you feeling now? Need me to get the EpiPen for you?" I set down my wine glass, my tone as calm as if I were discussing tomorrow morning's weather. "No need." Jeffrey's hand paused for a moment. Then he turned around and hugged me from behind. His chin rested against the crook of my neck, a spot that once made me feel incredibly safe, but now sent chills down my spine. "It is so good to be home, Teresa. Only when I am with you can I truly relax. Those social occasions reek too much of perfume and powder. Home is better, just the two of us, nice and quiet." He had said things like this countless times over the past 15 years. We had signed a detailed prenuptial agreement before getting married, and the most important unspoken understanding was, no children. We were both workaholics, viewing each other's careers as our only child. What we wanted was freedom. The spontaneity of being able to fly to Paris for an exhibition at any moment. The camaraderie of fighting side by side in the study at 2 a.m. I thought we were reflections of each other's souls. "Oh, by the way," Jeffrey let go of me and poured himself a glass of whiskey, his movements deliberately nonchalant. "My partner Mike just had his 3rd son. He showed me photos at the dinner." Before I could respond, he started chuckling to himself, a hint of tenderness I had never seen before showing in his eyes. Or rather, greed. That little guy really looks like Mike, especially the eyes. When I was holding him, I suddenly had this strange feeling. That feeling of life continuing. It was really moving. "You know what?" Mike said. "It was the best investment of his life." I froze there, my fingers gripping the edge of the sofa tightly. "Jeffrey," I interrupted him, my voice colder than I had expected. "Are you saying you want a child? I work in crisis PR, and my professional instincts make me dislike any ambiguous risks in life. If this were a business negotiation, what I am doing right now would be due diligence." Jeffrey paused for a moment, then burst into a hearty yet somewhat hollow laugh. "Of course not, darling. Don't misunderstand. I am already 48, and you are 42. We're going to have kids now. That would be crazy, wouldn't it?" He walked over and put his arm around my shoulder again, trying to melt the ice in my eyes with his body warmth. I was just musing human babies can be quite cute sometimes, but have me change diapers every day like Mike. Kill me now, he was lying. As someone who has clawed my way through the top echelons of this city's power circles, I knew this expression all too well. It was the expression of a Wall Street trader hiding massive losses, the expression of a politician concealing a sex scandal. He was testing me. "I am going to take a shower." Jeffrey kissed my forehead and hurried toward the master bedroom. The sound of water came from the bathroom. I sat in the empty living room, gazing at the dark silhouettes of trees in Central Park outside the window. That perfume scent still lingered in the air, cheap, cloying, and provocative. It wasn't any perfume I used. My style was usually crisp, woody notes. This kind of scent belonged to those young girls hungry to climb up, looking for shortcuts in this cruel city. I opened my phone, didn't send Jeffrey any confrontational messages, but tapped on the contact of a private investigator instead. In New York, Tears are the most useless thing. Information and leverage are the hard currency. If the giant ship of my marriage had already hit an iceberg, I would never be the one crying on the deck waiting to be rescued. I would be the one who grabs a lifeboat first and shorts the shipping company's stock while I am at it. The next morning, Jeffrey's cousin Sarah came to our apartment. She was the owner of an avant-garde gallery in Soho, and the only person in Jeffrey's family who was even more clear-headed than me. She had always sneered at Jeffrey's old money style that he was so proud of. "Teresa, you need to come check out my gallery," Sarah said, while sipping her espresso and casually flipping through her iPad. Jeffrey recently sponsored a new artist named Paige, 24 years old, just moved here from Los Angeles. And besides posting selfies and incomprehensible text on Instagram, I can't see any artistic talent in her. Paige? I repeated the name, quickly sketching out an image in my mind. Young, tight skin, a face full of collagen, and that kind of ambition that wants to devour everything. "Yeah," Jeffrey insisted. "I hold an exhibition for her at the gallery." He called it Supporting Emerging Talent. Sarah rolled her eyes and lowered her voice. But I saw the way that girl looks at Jeffrey, not like looking at a patron, more like looking at a walking black card. Also, that perfume she wears is so strong, it is gonna give my minimalist paintings in the gallery allergies. All the clues came full circle at this moment. The lie about pollen allergies, the scent of perfume, the sudden sentimentality about the continuation of life. And that girl named Paige. After seeing Sarah off, I immediately called my assistant, asking her to look into Jeffrey's recent personal account transactions, especially those payments made through offshore trusts. Just then, my phone screen lit up. It was an Instagram DM request from an account called Paige Faye Official, set to vanish mode. I tapped it open, and the moment the image loaded, my heart clenched hard. It was an ultrasound. The black and white image was blurry, but to my eyes it was as clear as a death sentence. Then came a barrage of texts. "I am pregnant." "It is a boy," Jeffrey said. "His family needs an heir, and you can't give him one. Sister Teresa, you are excellent, but you are too old and too cold. What Jeffrey needs is a woman who can make him feel the vitality of life, not a business partner. Let go. We're going to give this child a complete family." I looked at these words and didn't feel as angry as I'd imagined. Instead, an extreme sense of absurdity washed over me. That Jeffrey who used to sit with me in the study, mocking those couples who gave up themselves for procreation, that Jeffrey who swore our ideas are the greatest legacy we leave in this world, had now betrayed our 15-year alliance for an unformed embryo. Me phone buzzed again, a text from Jeffrey. "I won't be home for dinner tonight, got an important board meeting." Board meeting, more like accompanying that artist to her prenatal checkup. I didn't reply. Instead, I slowly walked upstairs. Jeffrey was in the walk-in closet picking out a tie. When he saw me come in, his gaze flickered away for a moment. "Jeffrey?" I leaned against the doorframe, dangling my phone in my hand, the screen frozen on that ultrasound screenshot. Thank God I screenshotted it before it was deleted. "We need to talk about your board meeting, or about your legacy." Jeffrey's hand froze midair while adjusting his tie. He turned around, the panic on his face vanishing in an instant, replaced by a coldness and sense of entitlement I had never seen before. "You already know everything." He didn't deny it, didn't even bother to make up another excuse. "Since you already know, let's just lay our cards on the table." He walked over to stand across from me, didn't apologize, and instead straightened his back, as if he was the one standing on the moral high ground. "Teresa, I know this isn't fair to you, but you have to understand, when a man reaches my age, the fear of death surpasses everything. I made so much money on Wall Street, built such a huge legacy. If we don't have children, what is the point of all this? Should I just wait until I die and donate it all to charities that won't even remember who I was?" "So that is your excuse?" I stared at him coldly. "Breaking the spirit of our contract, cheating. Finding a girl 24 years younger than you. This isn't cheating. This is evolutionary psychology." Jeffrey raised his voice, launching into his nauseating sophistry. The instinct of male creatures is to spread their genes. Teresa, you are a rational person. You should understand that the passion between us has long become like one hand touching the other. I need fresh blood. I need to see my genes continue in this world. Paige can give me all of this, and you are past that age. Slap. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. I put every ounce of strength into that slap, snapping his head to the side, his cheek quickly swelling red. Jeffrey Thorne. I stared at him, my voice like an ice-tempered blade. You truly disgust me. You are not pursuing some continuation of life. You are just a coward scared shitless by a midlife crisis. You think having a child can prove you are still young. You think finding a young girl can take you back to your 20s. I took a deep breath, suppressing the surging anguish in my chest. The man I had loved for 15 years had already died completely before this moment. Standing in front of me was just a stranger, consumed by desire and vanity. You want a divorce, right? Fine. I stepped back, putting distance between us. But remember, Jeffrey, in New York, divorce is never about feelings. It is about asset restructuring. Since you want your legacy, you'd better pray you can afford the price. Jeffrey covered his face, his eyes sinister. Teresa, don't get too greedy. You are a PR expert. You know if you blow this up, it won't be good for your company either. Let's keep this civilized. I'll give you a sum of money, civilized. I laughed out loud, yet tears were welling up in my eyes. But I absolutely refused to let them fall. Someone like you deserves to talk about being civilized. You'd better get the hell out right now, go be with your musin, that heir to the throne who might not even make it to birth. This is my house, get out. Jeffrey straightened his suit, restoring his elite facade. You'll regret this, Teresa. You don't understand a father's feelings at all. He strode away like a hero bearing humiliation for some great cause. I stood where I was, watching his figure disappear at the end of the staircase. A father's feelings, how laughable. My gaze fell on the black and white photo on the wall taken on our 5th wedding anniversary. In the photo, we were young, sharp, with eyes only for each other, and now all of that had become the greatest irony. I took out my phone and dialed my lawyer and private investigator. Let's begin, I said into the phone, my voice as calm as if issuing a merger directive. I want a list of all hidden assets under his name, and also prepare me a background investigation report on Miss Page. The more detailed, the better. After hanging up, I walked to the wine cabinet, took out that bottle of Jeffrey's favorite $50,000 red wine, walked to the kitchen sink, pulled out the cork and poured it all down the drain. Watching the crimson liquid flow down the drain like blood, I finally felt a hint of satisfaction. Since you want a new beginning, I'll destroy your past. Your money, your reputation, your social circle. Jeffrey, I'll make you understand that in this world, the most expensive thing was never some heiress, but the price of betraying Teresa Vance. The week Jeffrey moved out, Manhattan's social circle was eerily quiet. I knew he was waiting for me to break down like some abandoned bitter woman, or to accept his insulting settlement agreement for the sake of so-called decency. But he underestimated me. I went to work as usual, went to Pilates class as usual, attended business luncheons as usual, as if my husband wasn't building a love nest with New York's youngest influencer in a luxury Soho apartment. However, Paige clearly didn't have Jeffrey's composure. Young opportunists are always eager to stake their claim. Saturday afternoon, I was sitting in the study of my Upper East Side apartment reviewing an acquisition case for an emerging tech company when the security system downstairs suddenly went off. I opened the surveillance screen and saw a red Porsche parked outside the building. The one Jeffrey had just bought last week, not even registered in his name yet. Paige was teetering on 4-inch killer heels, wearing oversized sunglasses, carrying that Hermes Birkin bag that seemed especially ironic at this moment, yelling at the doorman. I am the lady of this house. I have the right to go in. Her voice came through the intercom, shrill and grating. Jeffrey sent me to get some of his clothes. How dare you watchdogs try to stop me? The doorman was clearly in a tough spot about to call me. I pressed the intercom button. Let her up. At that moment, my internal public relations radar went into overdrive. If she only wanted the clothes, she could have easily sent her assistant to pick them up. Her coming in person was a deliberate act of provocation, meant to anger me and see me lose control. Good. I quickly opened the apartment's smart home control system. This system was installed a few years ago for security, equipped with omnidirectional Ultra HD cameras and real-time streaming capabilities. I turned off the camera indicator lights, then opened my live stream link in a private socialite group. This group included the wives, daughters, and mistresses of almost every important figure in New York. A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Paige walked in, removing her sunglasses, her collagen-filled face written all over with a victor's arrogance. She looked around this home that Jeffrey and I had spent years of effort building, her eyes full of greed and contempt. "So this is where you've lived for 15 years, she scoffed, her fingers sliding across the $300,000 Ming Dynasty blue and white porcelain vase by the entryway. It really reeks of old woman mustiness. Once Jeffrey and I are married, everything here will be replaced." I sat on the single armchair in the living room, tablet in hand, and didn't stand up to greet her. "Trespassing is grounds for calling the police directly in America, Miss Sinclair," I said coolly. "While I admire your courage, your legal knowledge is clearly as lacking as your aesthetic taste." "Call the police?" Paige acted like she'd heard some joke. She thrust out her belly that wasn't showing yet and swaggered to the center of the living room. "Jeffrey is the owner of this house, and I am the mother of his child. The police will side with me when they come. But you, Auntie Teresa, what is the point of staying here and refusing to leave? Jeffrey doesn't love you anymore. Not only can you not give him children, you can't even get him excited." She casually picked up a modern art sculpture from the coffee table, a 10th wedding anniversary gift to us from Jeffrey's favorite artist, and toyed with it absent-mindedly. "You know what Jeffrey says about you? He says being with you is like sleeping with an Excel spreadsheet, dull, boring, ice-cold. He says only with me does he feel like a real man." I glanced at the camera hidden in the corner of the bookshelf. The viewer count in the live stream was skyrocketing. Those women who were usually known for their elegance in this circle were now frantically scrolling through the comments, witnessing this farce. "So, you think you are his savior?" I retorted, my tone still calm. "Based on what, the child in your belly? Or that relationship of yours that was already full of lies before it even began?" "Shut up!" Paige was enraged by my composure. She violently hurled the sculpture in her hands onto the floor. Bang. That priceless sculpture shattered into pieces in an instant. "This is just the beginning," she screamed, her emotions spiraling out of control. "I'll destroy everything you have," Jeffrey promised me. "This house is mine, your villa in the Hamptons is mine too. You menopausal old hag, you should have been replaced long ago." Just then, the front door opened again. Jeffrey rushed in, panting, obviously having been notified by the doorman. "Paige, what are you doing?" He rushed over to grab Paige's wrist, but when he saw the shattered pieces on the floor and Paige's tear-streaked face, that protective instinct took over again. He turned to look at me, his eyes full of disgust. "Teresa, what did you do to her? She is pregnant. Do you have to be this vicious?" "I didn't do anything." I spread my hands, even showing a hint of a smile. "She barged in herself, smashed your stuff, and then started giving an acceptance speech." "You are lying!" Paige immediately threw herself into Jeffrey's arms, trembling and sobbing. "She insulted me. She called me a prostitute and said my baby was illegitimate." "Jeffrey, my stomach hurts so much." "Our baby," Jeffrey immediately panicked, pointing at my face and cursing. "Teresa, if anything happens to my child, I'll make you pay with your life." "You cold-blooded monster. No wonder your parents didn't love you. No wonder you are destined to die alone." I looked at this so-called true love in front of me, listening to those venomous words from Jeffrey's mouth that could kill any relationship, and the last ripple in my heart finally settled. "Jeffrey," I pointed at the red dot on the bookshelf, the only faint reflection from the camera. "Let me interrupt. From the moment Paige walked in, you've been live streaming to all of New York's elite circles." Jeffrey's face instantly turned deathly pale. What did you say? I said. The footage of Paige smashing things just now, the footage of her calling me a menopausal old hag, and the footage of you cursing me to defend her has probably already spread across the entire Upper East Side. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. In this circle, cheating might not be a capital offense, but stupidity and losing composure definitely are. Congratulations, you've just completed social suicide. Jeffrey stiffly turned his head, staring at that seemingly inconspicuous camera. His phone started buzzing frantically, countless calls and texts flooding in, from his partners, his clients, even his family elders. Paige still hadn't processed what happened, still sobbing. What live stream? What is she talking about? I walked to the doorway, opened the door, and made a please gesture. Get out, take your legacy and your muse with you. And remember to have your lawyer prepare the money to compensate for that sculpture. It is one of a kind, $3.7 million, no discounts. Jeffrey's phone ringtone echoed through the dead, silent living room, like a death knell. The effect of that live stream was even better than I had expected. In New York's elite circles that seem open but are actually conservative, face is currency. Jeffrey could keep 10 mistresses on the side, but he couldn't let his mistress barge into his wife's home like a crazy bitch throwing a tantrum, and he certainly couldn't let himself look like a fool with his brain clouded by hormones, viciously cursing the wife who'd fought alongside him for 15 years just to protect his mistress. Although the video didn't spread on the public internet after all, I didn't want to get caught up in privacy lawsuits. In private elite social circles, it spread faster than a virus. The next morning, I was drinking black coffee in my office, watching the data constantly flickering on my computer screen. After the market opened, Jeffrey's fund faced withdrawal inquiries from several major LPs in this circle. Investors don't just put their money into projects, they invest in the fund manager's judgment. How could anyone trust a man who couldn't even manage his own dick and his family to manage billions of dollars in assets? Meanwhile, Paige's influencer career suffered a devastating blow. I leveraged my connections in the fashion industry. After a few phone calls, several luxury brands that had originally planned to sponsor her announced they were canceling their collaborations. The reasons were diplomatically worded, brand image adjustments. But everyone knew the real deal. Nobody wanted their products associated with a homewrecker who cursed like a sailor and smashed artwork on a live stream. However, that is not enough. What I want isn't just to make them lose face. I want real, tangible benefits. My legal team sat across the conference table, briefing me on the latest developments. Miss Vance, Jeffrey's side, has offered to pay a sum of alimony and give up ownership of this apartment, hoping to sign the divorce agreement as soon as possible. The lawyer pushed up his glasses. But he is demanding we include extremely strict confidentiality clauses in the agreement, and publicly release a statement clarifying that the previous livestream was a misunderstanding. He is getting desperate. I let out a cold laugh. Because Paige's belly can't wait. In American high society, having a child out of wedlock isn't illegal, but it is absolutely an extremely disgraceful thing, especially for someone like Jeffrey who flaunts his old money family background. He desperately needs to give that child a legitimate status. If they're not married when the child is born, that child will have a hard time getting on the waiting lists for top private schools, let alone being accepted by those snobbish social clubs. Paige must be pressuring him too. She doesn't just want money, she wants that Mrs. Thorne title, wants to throw a grand baby shower before the child is born. Tell him I don't accept. I closed the file. I am going to drag this out. Drag it out until Paige's belly is too big to fit into a wedding dress, until that child becomes a real illegitimate child. But, the lawyer hesitated, if this drags on too long once it enters litigation, the judge might rule for an equal split of assets. New York is an equitable distribution state. Even with a prenup, the appreciation during the marriage is still tricky. Who said I am going to court? I stood up, walked to the floor, to ceiling window, looking down at Manhattan's steel jungle landscape. I am going to make him beg me to sign. I took out a document and tossed it on the table. This is the evidence I've compiled on Jeffrey using company accounts to pay for Paige's personal expenses over the past 3 years. including her rent in Los Angeles, first-class tickets, and those art acquisition payments that never showed up on the financial statements. The amounts aren't huge for him, but it is enough to pique the sex interest. The lawyer's eyes lit up. Misappropriation of funds? It might not rise to criminal charges, but it violates his fiduciary duty clauses with his partners. Exactly. I turned around, eyes blazing. If the sex steps in to investigate, his fund will be frozen, and his partners will kick him out to save themselves. By then, forget about leaving an inheritance for the kid. He'll have to borrow money just to buy Paige diapers. This is my leverage. What Jeffrey cares about most isn't me, or even Paige. It is his reputation and his money. He sees that unborn child as a vessel for his legacy. So I'll make him understand that if he has no money, that so-called legacy is just a burden. Go tell Jeffrey I issued my final instruction. If he wants my signature, fine. I want 80% of the liquid assets from our joint accounts, plus the beachfront villa in the Hamptons. If he doesn't agree, I'll send these documents to the SEC and give the financial section editor at the New York Times a call. 80%? The lawyer drew a sharp breath. This is practically robbery. No, I corrected him. This is cutting losses. On Wall Street, everyone knows that when an investment has completely failed, liquidating and exiting is the highest wisdom. My marriage is a bad debt, and now I am collecting it back with interest. That evening, Jeffrey's call came through to my personal phone. I watched that familiar name flash on the screen for a long time, only answering at the very last moment. Teresa, have you lost your mind? Jeffrey's voice sounded utterly exhausted, even trembling slightly. You want 80%. Are you trying to bankrupt me? You can choose not to give it, I said casually, while trimming the orchids on the windowsill, but I hear the Sikh has been cracking down hard lately. Besides, Paige's belly should be showing by now, right? If we drag this out another 2 months, that dream wedding might have to be held in the delivery room. Dead silence on the other end of the line. I knew it. I had won. He was weighing his options. On one side, a massive loss of wealth; on the other, complete ruin and the legitimate status of that heir. For an extremely vain man, saving face now is always more important than money in the future. Fine. Jeffrey's voice sounded like it was squeezed through clenched teeth. I'll sign, but you have to guarantee that you'll destroy all the evidence and release a joint statement to the public saying we split amicably. Of course. I snipped off a withered flower stem. I am a businesswoman who keeps her word, Jeffrey, unlike some people. After hanging up, I looked at the bustling night view outside the window. No hysteria, no sobbing. I ended my 15-year love with a precise business game. This isn't pathetic, this is fair. Since you treated our child as a commodity, I turned our marriage into a transaction. Jeffrey, I hope that Hare, who cost me 80% of my fortune, is really worth you paying such a high price. On the day of the signing, a torrential rain fell on New York. The location was a conference room at a midtown Manhattan law firm. The floor-to-ceiling windows here could normally overlook all of Central Park, but right now there was only a gray curtain of rain outside, much like Jeffrey's expression at this moment. When he arrived, he didn't bring Paige with him. Clearly, he knew that woman would only make things worse at the negotiating table. Jeffrey wore a dark gray suit, but he had clearly lost weight. His eye bags were puffy, and that confident elite aura seemed to have been mostly washed away by the rain. When he saw me, his eyes were complicated. There was anger, resentment, and even a hint of barely perceptible regret. And me wearing a perfectly tailored white Celine suit, with exquisite makeup, looking radiant. To him, I must have looked like a victor who had traveled back from the future to attend his funeral. All the documents are here. My lawyer pushed a thick stack of agreements to the center of the table. 80% of the liquid assets will be transferred to Miss Vance's trust account within 24 hours after signing, and the title transfer paperwork for the Hamptons villa is also ready. Jeffrey picked up the pen, his hand trembling slightly. He stared at those numbers, each zero feeling like it was cutting into his flesh. Teresa, he suddenly spoke, his voice hoarse, does it really have to come to this? 15 years of us, is it really only worth these cold, hard numbers? I raised my head, meeting his gaze calmly. Jeffrey, when you decided to betray our vows for a fertilized egg you've never even met, when you let your mistress barge into my home to humiliate me, we already had no feelings left to speak of. Now, this is just an asset divestiture. Just like how you used to handle those bad assets, a clean cut is better for everyone. Jeffrey gritted his teeth, seemingly wanting to argue back, but in the end just hung his head in defeat. Paige is about to give birth, he said in a low voice, as if making excuses for himself. I want to give the child a clean start, then sign it. I said coldly. This is the most expensive ticket you've ever bought for your son. The scratching sound of the pen tip across paper seemed particularly harsh in the quiet meeting room. Jeffrey finished signing the last character as if drained of all his strength and slumped back in his chair. Done. The lawyer checked the documents and nodded at me. I stood up, straightened my clothes, and without giving Jeffrey another glance, turned and walked toward the door. Teresa, Jeffrey called out to stop me from behind. I stopped, but didn't turn around. You'll regret this. His voice dripped with resentment. You took the money, but you'll never experience that feeling of blood connection. I'll prove it to you. My choice is right. My son will inherit my business, carry on my name, while you'll just grow old alone clutching that pile of money. I turned around and looked at this man I once loved so deeply. At this moment I only found him utterly pathetic. Jeffrey, I smiled faintly. You are wrong. Money won't make me lonely. Money will give me freedom. As for your blood connection, good luck. I hope that child really can live up to your expectations and shoulder the weight of your heavy vanity. Walking out of the building. The rain had stopped. The air was filled with the scent of moist earth, so fresh it made you want to take a deep breath. My phone buzzed, a deposit notification from the bank. That long string of numbers was enough to let me live the most luxurious life, even if I did nothing for the rest of my days. But I didn't plan to do nothing. That evening, I hosted a small celebratory dinner at the Hamptons beachfront villa that had just become entirely mine. I invited only my closest friends and business partners, and of course Sarah, who had been secretly helping me all along. To freedom. Sarah raised her champagne glass, laughing so hard she was shaking all over. God, Teresa, you are literally my idol. You not only dumped that narcissist, but also made him hemorrhage money in the process. Do you know what people in the circle are saying now? They're calling you Wall Street's most ruthless ex-wife. That is a compliment. I smiled and took a sip of champagne. In this circle, ruthless is the highest praise a woman can get. Halfway through the dinner, my phone rang again. This time it was a text from Paige. We got married just now, Jeffrey said. I am the light of his life. You lost, Teresa. That money you took, Jeffrey will earn it back sooner or later, and I am Mrs. Thorne forever. Attached below was a photo. She was wearing a loose white wedding dress, holding a bouquet, snuggling up to Jeffrey. Both of their smiles were bright, but if you looked closely, Jeffrey's eyes still showed undisguisable exhaustion, while Paige's eyes were full of that smugness of someone who had finally made it to the top. I looked at the photo, completely unmoved. What is wrong? Sarah leaned over. That idiot again? I handed her my phone to look. Ha, Sarah let out a disdainful snort. This is her victory, marrying an old man who is almost 50, just lost 80% of his fortune, has a ruined reputation, and still faces potential CC investigation risks. This girl's investment sense is really something. I took back my phone, blocked Paige's number directly, and then deleted that text message. It is her choice. I looked at the pitch, black sea outside the window, waves crashing against the beach, making rhythmic sounds. She wanted that crown, even if it is made of paper and crawling with lice. Since she has put it on, let's just hope she can bear the weight. I turned back to the crowd and raised my glass. Everyone, I said loudly, besides celebrating my single status tonight, I have an announcement to make. The originally noisy living room instantly fell silent. I've decided to establish a charitable foundation. This fund will be personally financed by me. that is, the 80% of assets contributed by Jeffrey to support underprivileged girls who can't complete their education due to family hardships, as well as to support women's entrepreneurial projects in STEM fields. The crowd burst into enthusiastic applause and cheers. Rather than leaving the money to an heir who doesn't even know me, I smiled at everyone. It is better to invest it in the future. This is my legacy. At that moment, I felt lighter than ever before. What Jeffrey pursued was biological continuation, carving his name on a tombstone. What I pursued was spiritual freedom, sowing hope in living people. We were ultimately two different kinds of people. Time is the best filter. In the 2 years that followed, I lived an incredibly fulfilling life. Without the shackles of marriage, my business empire expanded even further. The foundation operated very successfully, sponsoring hundreds of girls to attend college. I even started trying to invest in some women-oriented tech startups, carving out a bloody path in this originally male-dominated field. I occasionally saw news about Jeffrey and Paige on social media. Paige was working very hard to maintain her Mrs. Thorne persona. She posted photos of her kid on Instagram, showed off designer bags, showed off vacations, but anyone with eyes could see that her life wasn't that glamorous. Jeffrey's career took a heavy hit. Although he didn't go completely bankrupt, he lost most of his liquid assets and investors' trust, and his status on Wall Street plummeted. He started frequently taking on high-risk speculative projects, trying to quickly recover his losses. But this only dragged him deeper into the mud. As for that, Herr Jeffrey had placed high hopes on the little boy named Leo. The rumors were getting stranger and stranger. Paige rarely posted photos of the child's face, and even when she did, they were mostly distant shots or carefully edited side profiles. In a circle where everyone couldn't wait to post every single time their kid rolled over to show off, this kind of secrecy seemed especially abnormal. Until one day, I was vacationing in Napa Valley, California, and was visiting a winery when I received a call from Sarah Teresa. You'll never guess what happened. Sarah's voice sounded both shocked and tinged with an indescribable mix of emotions. Jeffrey's son, something happened. I set down the wine glass in my hand and walked out to the terrace. What happened? The child has never been able to speak, can't even sit up steadily. Paige has always told everyone it is just slow development, but last week Jeffrey took him for a comprehensive genetic test. Sarah paused. It has been confirmed. It is Angelman syndrome, a rare neurodevelopmental disorder. Severe intellectual disability, absence of speech, motor dysfunction. This child may never be able to take care of himself for the rest of his life. I fell silent. Angelman syndrome, also commonly known as happy puppet syndrome. And Sarah's voice dropped even lower. The doctor said it was caused by a microdeletion in the paternal chromosome. Although it is usually a random mutation, some research suggests that declining sperm quality in older fathers might increase this risk. That doctor reportedly got grabbed by the collar and called a quack by Jeffrey right on the spot. I watched the golden California sunlight spill across the vineyard before me, yet felt a bone-chilling cold. Is this karma? Jeffrey, for the sake of so-called superior gene continuation, for that illusory family legacy, abandoned our 15 years of relationship, betrayed his vows, and even didn't hesitate to humiliate me. He went to great lengths. You could even say he went all in just to have a perfect heir. In the end, fate played the cruelest joke on him. That child not only couldn't inherit his business, but couldn't even understand the meaning of the word father. He would forever be an existence that needed to be cared for, to be pitied, becoming Jeffrey's biggest burden for the rest of his life. Where is he? I asked. Still in New York. I heard he caused a huge scene at the hospital, even trashed the director's office. The videos are all over the internet now, everyone saying he has gone crazy. I hung up the phone and opened social media. Sure enough, that video had already hit the trending page. In the video, Jeffrey's hair was disheveled, completely devoid of his usual elite demeanor. His eyes were bloodshot as he pointed at the doctor and screamed, "Impossible! I am an Ivy League graduate, an elite. My genes are the most perfect. How could I father a child like this? You made a mistake. You must have made a mistake." Beside him was Paige, holding the child and crying hysterically. She looked utterly haggard, her once exquisite makeup smeared all over. And that child in his mother's arms let out an unconscious, eerie laugh, completely unaware of what was happening around him. The comment section was full of sighs, but even more were cold mockery and ridicule. "This is what you call karma. Back then he abandoned his first wife to have a son, and now look, he got exactly what he asked for. I heard this guy used to brag about how superior his genes were. Bet he is eating his words now. That poor child, born into such a family, stuck with a father like that." Watching that hysterical man, I thought I would feel happy, or at least that satisfying. I knew this would happen kind of pleasure. But no, I only felt sorrow. Not for Jeffrey. He wasn't worth it. I felt it for that child and for humanity's laughable obsession. Jeffrey spent his entire life trying to defy death, trying to leave his mark, only to prove in the end that he was nothing before the laws of nature. His so-called elite arrogance was as fragile as a sheet of paper in the face of genetic mutation. I turned off my phone and took a deep breath. The air was filled with the sweet fragrance of fermenting grapes, Miss Vance. The owner of the winery walked over. "Our wine tasting is about to begin. Would you like to join?" I turned around and nodded with a smile. Of course. I didn't need to stick around to watch Jeffrey's downfall, because my life had to go on, and it would be even more wonderful than before. His tragedy was just a footnote, long since turned in the story of my life, not even worth another second of my time to linger on. Half a year later, I made a trip back to New York for the Foundation's first anniversary charity gala. The dinner was held at a top-tier hotel in Manhattan, with celebrities gathered everywhere. I was no longer the wife who depended on Jeffrey Thorne, but Teresa Vance, a philanthropist and investor with an independent reputation. In the corner of the banquet hall, I unexpectedly saw Jeffrey. He hadn't received an invitation. He must have snuck in. He had aged a lot, gray at the temples, and the suit that once fit him perfectly now hung loosely on him. He stood there alone with a glass of wine in his hand, watching the crowd around him, people who once called him brother, but now avoided him like the plague. I also saw Paige. She was standing not far from him, flirting with some equally down and out rich kid. There was no longer any love in her eyes, only naked boredom and calculation. Obviously, this resentful couple who had come together for profit had already fallen apart under the weight of reality. Jeffrey saw me. His eyes lit up for a moment, like a drowning man spotting a piece of driftwood. He hesitated, but still walked through the crowd toward me. Everyone around stopped their conversations, their gazes intentionally or unintentionally turning this way. In this circle, there was no drama more entertaining than this. The ex-wife returning in glory, the ex-husband down and out, Teresa. He stood before me, his voice somewhat hoarse. "You look good. Thank you." I nodded politely, my tone distant as if addressing an unfamiliar waiter. "Is there something you need, Jeffrey?" He seemed stung by my coldness and gave a bitter smile. "I just wanted to congratulate you. Your foundation is doing really well. I saw the news. It was done with your money." I pointed this out without mercy. "You should feel relieved. At least your money actually did something meaningful." Jeffrey's face twitched. He took a deep breath and lowered his voice. "Teresa, I know I was wrong. These past 2 years I've regretted it every single day. I shouldn't have given you up for something so illusory. Paige, she doesn't understand me at all. And that child is an absolute nightmare." He looked up, a hint of pleading in his eyes. "Can we start over? I know it is crazy, but I really miss the days we spent talking in the study. Only you understand me, Teresa." I looked at him, feeling nothing inside. Once this man was the center of my world. His every word could tug at my emotions, but now watching him grovel pathetically like this, I only felt he looked like a clown who had botched his act. "Start over?" I raised an eyebrow. "Jeffrey, did you forget something? You destroyed all of this with your own hands. You wanted a child, you got one. He may not be perfect, but he is still your child. As a man, you should step up and take responsibility, instead of whining to your ex." wife hear about how terrible your choices were. But I am not happy. He grabbed my arm somewhat agitatedly. That is not the life I wanted. Every day when I come home, all I face is crying, the smell of medicine, and Paige's complaints. I miss our quiet, I miss our freedom. I gently, but firmly brushed his hand away. That is your price to pay, Jeffrey. I looked straight into his eyes. Freedom has a price, and so does betrayal. You chose your genetic continuation back then, so you have to pay for it. As for me, my happiness now has nothing to do with you, Teresa. Don't come looking for me again. I stepped back, giving a look to the security personnel walking over. We settled our accounts long ago. Your legacy is that child, while my legacy is those girls I've helped, is my free soul. We walk on different paths and will never cross again. The security personnel walked up to Jeffrey. Sir, please show your invitation. Jeffrey looked at me. The light in his eyes completely extinguished. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something more, but in the end just hung his head dejectedly, turned around and left in disgrace under everyone's gaze. I watched his figure disappear at the doorway, feeling no thrill of victory, only a calm sense of dust finally settling. That once spirited Wall Street elite had ultimately been consumed by his own greed and vanity. At the end of the story, there was no need for any earth-shattering conclusion. As for what happened to Jeffrey afterwards, I didn't go out of my way to find out. I heard he and Paige got divorced, fighting tooth and nail over what little assets remained. The sick child was eventually sent to an expensive care facility, and Jeffrey had to pay the steep costs, forcing him to keep struggling in that financial world he could no longer keep up with. He became a complete joke, a piece of gossip for Manhattan's dinner tables. As for me, life went on. I now spend most of my time living in Santa Barbara, California. The sunshine here is wonderful, perfect for growing orchids. I built a glass greenhouse in my yard, filled with all kinds of my favorite orchids. Whenever I watch those flowers quietly blooming in the sunlight, I think back to that night at the Metropolitan Museum Charity Gala. That was the beginning of Jeffrey's lies, and also the starting point of my new life. I don't hate him, nor do I thank him. He was just a detour I had to take in my life, one that made me understand what is truly important. That afternoon, I went to a nearby community school to visit some girls sponsored by the foundation. One of them, a girl named Mia, was 18 this year, and had just received a full scholarship to MIT. She was an orphan, and without this funding she probably would have dropped out to work long ago. Miss Vance, Mia ran over excitedly, holding the acceptance letter in her hand. Thank you. Without you, I never would have dared to imagine I could make it this far. Looking at her young, hopeful face, I felt a sense of satisfaction like never before. This feeling was more real than any mansion, luxury car, or even that once perfect marriage. This is the true continuation of life. Not through bloodline, not through genes, but through love, through hope, through pulling someone out of the mud and watching her spread her wings and soar. I patted Mia's head. This is the result of your own hard work, Mia. Go fly. The world is yours. When I left the school, it was dusk. The sunset had painted the entire coastline golden. I drove alone on Highway 1, opened the window, and the wind tousled my hair. The radio was playing. I hummed along softly to the melody. Yis, I took the hits, but I lived my way. This is me, Teresa Vance. I am not anyone's accessory nor anyone's breeding tool. I am my own legacy. I am my own monument. The road is still long, the tank is full, and my life has just begun.